Hi, I'm Owen with the Open Cloud Academy. And in this scenario, we're going to look at a customer solution where our customer has some PCI or security requirements. Specifically, customers often come to the realization that they need to split out their application and databases into two separate tiers to meet compliance, regulatory compliance requirements. And so here's what that might look like in a dedicated environment. You'd have dedicated hardware for your web heads, and then dedicated hardware for your database on the back end, and then maybe a dedicated hardware SAN even behind that. For high availability, you might have redundant firewalls and redundant load balancers, but the whole cost of all of that hardware can be pretty extreme for a lot of customers. And in fact, a lot of times in a dedicated environment, because you're working with dedicated hardware, a lot of times customers will over-provision their hardware to make sure that they don't run out of resources. So they'll build out web heads that have much more RAM, much more disk, much more CPU than they actually need. So if a customer was in that type of situation and they were asked to split out their database and web tiers, one way of solving for that problem would be to implement a hypervisor solution. In this case, what a customer could do is they could take their 3 web heads and convert them into hypervisors. Here I still have the same 3 hosts. I haven't added any additional hardware to my solution. I just used those same 3 hosts, and I deployed hypervisor technology, allowing them to share resources and virtual machines across all 3 physical hardware boxes there. And then what they could do is then they could split out into separate virtual machines the databases that they wanted to have separate from the images that they ran as their web heads. All of those virtual machines would still live in the same hardware as they would have if they just were simply using 3 web heads. And I'm not even talking about having separate hardware down here for the database. So just 3 boxes, each with a hypervisor installed. And in the case of something like VMware, it gives you very easy resource utilization and resource pooling and things like that that allow you to move those virtual machines across all the different pieces of hardware that you have. In addition to that, there are requirements that require that your databases have private networking. You could provision a private network that the databases and the virtual machines would have access to that would have no access to the outside world, out to the internet. In addition to that, you would also want to have a logging solution. So you'd probably set up a separate log management box separate from your regular hypervisor cluster here. And of course, all of this hardware would be in a hardware cluster that would share SAN storage on the back end. So this is a way in a dedicated environment that you could achieve your security goals without having to add additional hardware to your solution. One reason why this wouldn't work in a cloud environment is that clouds are usually, well, specifically public clouds are multi-tenant by definition. So a public cloud would not work for this solution because you would have one customer as one cloud server, another customer as another cloud server. But in a virtual environment, specifically a virtual environment that's hosted on dedicated hardware that you're already paying for potentially, a virtual environment would just be one customer. It would just be that one customer's virtual solution on that customer's dedicated hardware. So this is an example of a dedicated hardware environment with virtualization laid over the top to achieve the goal of saving your customer money by not adding additional hardware and still address the security requirements of something like PCI compliance. Thanks for watching. I'm Owen Winn, a CloudU contributor. See you around campus.